These Eufys are some of the best-selling and highly rated robo vacuums, and today I brought them all with my own money, and I'm not gonna make you wait. Here are the final results. Thank you. And the best robo vacuum objectively is the Eufy X10. And I got this by testing and ranking each robo vacuum in all these different categories and then adding up all the ranks to see who had the overall better score. And these are all the ranks for each vacuums, and the X10 won by quite a bit. Last place is the L60. But I'm not done. I cut out all the fat and kept all the categories I think matter most, like hard floor, features, carpet, noise, and price. And unfortunately, the X10 didn't win. It shared its crown with the X8 being first again, and L60 is last again. But it is tied with S1, which, if you didn't know, is double the price of X10 at $1,500 without discounts, but it is an all-in-one machine. But it did not do well in some of the categories. You'll see later. So there you have it, X10 or the X8, but mostly the X10. And you can find most of these on sale, which is in the links in the description, which would help this channel out a lot. Thank you. But stick around for me to reveal my budget recommendations at the end. And the first place for hard floor is the S1 Pro because it is the most expensive. It didn't suck up all of the flour, but basically everything else, which is a tiny bit better than the Eufy X10. This spread the flour out a bit more than the S1 Pro, but not by much, so both of them are in A. Following up are the X8 and the C20. They did the best out of all for flour, especially the C20, but left some cornflakes when I lifted both of them up, so they are both B. And lastly, the L60 and the 11S. Both push the flour into the floor more, which is weird since all the Eufys have the same brush except the S1 with a silicone one. So we'll see what other features are different coming up, but it's similar to the rest, so also B for them. What matters most for robo vacuum features are surface area, battery life, and not attacking your animals, but also dustbin capacity. Here's a chart for the dustbin. Eufy 11S is first by miles because it doesn't have an auto empty dock, but the ones that do, Eufy C20 is best, while the S1 is actually the worst. And as for battery life, now the S1 is the best, while it's a tie for last with the X8 and Eufy 11S. So it's wasting more time going back and forth to charge. And lastly, the surface area is this. You can see that the total is highest in X8 and lowest in L60, but I think having a wider surface area is better because you can get closer to the edges, which is the S1 with 16 centimeters across, but we're measuring total right now, so now we add up the scores from all three sections, and this is the final score. It's pretty close, except L60, so that's going in D. Next up is S1, C20, X8 being all around each other, so all B. And Eufy X10 in second, and Eufy 11S, the budget is actually first, but not by that much. So they're both in A. But before we move on, I want to say what really annoyed me. Mainly, the C20 is so hard to mop. If you want it to mop, it has to wash and dry the mop first every time, and if you move the robot, it will start positioning forever. And the navigation on this is not great, but was it the worst? You'll see in a little bit. And even clicking on mop only, it might still not mop. I was so annoyed. And it's the main reason why I couldn't get the mapping results later on for the mopping section. But on the bright side, the L60 has a built-in hair cutting system inside of the dock. Pretty cool. And the S1 has an auto detergent dispensing system, so not all bad news. Older vacuums will require you to pick up stuff from the floor before you turn on the robo vacuums. But as technology have gotten better, not only do we have AI generated pictures of my DoorDash driver when I don't tip,
I am the one who knocks,
but also better navigation. Well, some. The X8 clipped the small remote and pushed the larger one, but stopped before the candle and went around, but then hit the box. So 3 out of 4 targets hit, so it gets a C. The C20 remove both the remotes and then went around the candle and the box, but then barely clipping both of them. So I'll do half a point for both. 3 out of 4 targets hit, so that's also a C. The S1 was impressive because it managed to see the tiny remote and backtrack multiple times, but just clipped them and then saw both the candle and the box and hit the big remote while it was scanning its surroundings. If this area was bigger, maybe it would have done better, but for now it is 1.5 targets out of 4 targets hit, so that gets it an A. The X10 pushed the remote, missed the face mask, but hit the box and avoided the candle, but clipped it slightly, so 0.5 targets hit. Total 2.5 out of 4 targets hit. This is a B. But do you hear that? No, because the noise of the X10 is pretty low, but it's not the lowest. What is though? Let's finish this first. The last 2 places are 11S and L60. Although the L60 could see more objects than the 11S, it still hit them all. But it wasn't nearly as bad as the 11S. It just didn't accept the concept of an obstacle. It just kept going. 4 out of 4 targets hit, and they are both D. For me to use a robo vacuum, I want it to be unnoticeable. I don't want to buy a thing for it to have like construction noise in my house. That was the C20 that turned on. But that's not even close to the loudest S1, with the lowest setting still being at 58 dB. And when we crank the suction up, it's a 73 dB, with an average noise of 65.5 dB, landing it in the D tier, no contest. And now that we have a reference, let's go to the charts. And in the low speed, the quietest was the Eufy X8 and the loudest with the Eufy 11S, because it only had 1 speed setting. The C20 and X10 was also respectable. And in the high speeds, it was a tie between the C20, X8, and X10. And keep in mind, these are rough numbers. I try to get the average. One thing is, L60 is around the same noise as the S1, but the suction is not nearly as powerful, so just keep that in mind. So now we take the low noise, the high noise, combine it to get an average. The X8 is taking the crown again, so it had a perfect score and is going to S. But does that mean it sacrificed some power to get that lower noise level? We'll see in the carpet testing. But before that, the C20 and the X10 were similar, so both an A, and the 11S and L60 were almost as loud as the S1, so they are both in C. We put 3 lines of cornflakes, oatmeal, and a line of what fun looks like at a Diddy party. And surprisingly, Eufy S1 Pro sucks the most flour and just leaving 2 cornflakes. So if it weren't for these 2, it would be an S, but for now, it's still an A+. Then we also have the X8 and X10 in A, because although the X8 did amazing, when we lifted the vacuum, it left some cornflakes while the X10 pushed the cornflakes and oatmeal, so it did a bit worse than the X8. Now we start to see the flour getting dragged a lot with the C20. You see how wide the width of the flour stain versus all the rest. And the same with the L60. They just don't have enough suction, which also left some oatmeal. So they are both B. Now the worst is Eufy 11S. The budget option, so it's expected, but is it still the cheapest if we add up the filter and dust bag costs? We'll see. But for carpet, it's a C-. So if your home is all carpets, consider getting a cordless vacuum instead. I got a video here on the best ones. Or be prepared to spend quite a lot because the budget versions of robo vacuums just aren't cutting it. The economy is so bad right now, we've resorted to lowballing free marketplace ads. So we need to know the best value for the vacuum, the dust bag, and also the filter cost for 1 year of ownership. And let's just say it takes 2 months for the dust bags to get filled up. And these are the prices for a year, no discounts and from official sellers, with the X8 being the highest. And although the C20 had the highest capacity at 3.1 liters versus 2.5 for the rest, now for the filters, most brands recommend 3 to 6 months, so let's do 4.5 months, and these are the prices. Again, X8 is the highest, with the Eufy 11S being the lowest. But the quality and the size of the filters are different, so it kind of makes more sense this time. And now the average lifespan of a robo vacuum is 4 to 6 years, so we'll do the cost of the dust bag and the filters for 5 years. And this is it. Keep in mind the Eufy 11S doesn't have a dust bag because it doesn't have an auto empty dock, but the ones ones that do have a dock, the C20 is the cheapest and the X8 is the highest. But you can get them on sale or replace them less frequently or get knockoffs to reduce the price. But good news is you don't really have to replace the hair detanglers inside the robo vacuums, but the bad news is that some of them don't even work. You'll see why. But for now, let's see the prices of the actual vacuums. And these are the prices without discount, and you can see the S1 is almost double the second place. And if we add that to the prices we got previously for the 5 years, now we see the total cost for 5 years, and Eufy 11S wins by miles. So it gets an S. But the L60 is still much better than the rest despite having a dock, so it's an A. And then we have the C20 at B, and the X10 and X8 pretty close together, so they are both C. And the last place, S1, is crazy, so it gets a D-. What's worse than finding my girlfriend's hair in awkward places is finding that her hair has replaced the brush fibers with her own. So let's see which one actually detangles hair, starting with 5 inches. We have an amazing performance with X8 with nothing on the brush and only a few strands sticking out from the dustbin thanks to its Pro Detangle comb, which is better than the X10 because this one sticks out a little bit more. The second place is the X1, clumps of hair but didn't coil around the brush. Then the X10 with a little bit inside coiling, and then the L60 with a little bit more inside, and then the 11S with a bit more inside again, but nothing compares to the C20. This is ridiculous. What's surprising is that it has the same detangle comb as the X8. And for the 10-inch, again, X8 did terrible. Look at this. This is crazy. To be fair, I don't think the hair detangler is meant for hair this long, but still. The best one was actually Eufy 11S with no detanglers, but it's only because it got all caught in between the silicone gaps. And honestly, you can look at the rest, none did that good. They all look about the same to me, so they are all in the same place as the X10. Now I combine the scores from both rounds and this is the results. The X8 did so well in the first round, it's still first, but only in B. And again, same for S1. Eufy X10, L60, and 11S has similar scores, so all C. And then last place, C20 with a D. The best docks needs to have the most dust bag capacity, clean and dirty water tank capacity, and quality of life features to allow me to be as lazy as possible and level up my brain rot by doom scrolling on TikTok. And we can start with a dust bag. They are similar, but the C20 is clearly ahead with the S1 in second. But the water tanks actually have X10 as the lead and S1 as third. Cause the dock looks pretty, but why does it barely have any space for the stuff we actually care about? And for the special features, the S1 is miles ahead with auto empty, washing, drying, detergent, and has an LED screen. While the second place, C20 and X10 has auto empty, washing, and drying, but surprisingly, the L60 has auto empty and a hair cutting system inside the dock, so it's in third place, while X8 is in last. So now we combine the points from all 3 rounds, and the first place is, surprisingly, C20. Yes, the S1 has a lot of extra features, but the ones that matter most, C20 has slightly bit more, with the X10 doing similarly, so they all go in A. Then we have the L60, the X8, not too great, but their price reflects that, so it's a C and D. This won't be included in the rankings since the L60 and the 11S doesn't have a mop, but also because I couldn't get the C20 to mop, and when I did, it was like 2 seconds. So I couldn't test it, but the ones I did test, the X8 didn't really do anything, and I didn't expect it to because it's just a wet towel. And unfortunately, the S1, the most expensive one, didn't do that well. It did really well. Look at this. It got almost everything. I had to push it along because it stopped and I didn't want that to mess with the results. But if it did its thing, it would have gotten all of it. And surprisingly tied with the X10 because this was also good. But I will say the X10 left it a little bit more wet, so it might take a little bit longer to dry. And finally, we're done, and you can decide which categories aren't that important to you. And you did in my last video because a lot of people didn't think the noise was that important. You should. But if we got rid of that category also, and we only have hard floor, features, carpet, and price, then the new points aren't too different. They're very different. Because the first place now is the Eufy 11S, which is our budget option at $250. And you can find it for much less on sale. And when you go back to the previous chart, it was actually second place. And usually, if you get the cheapest option, it's usually terrible at most things. But because Eufy is a pretty well-known brand and most of their products are not bad, then that means you're cutting out all the fluff while just getting the good stuff, which you might be able to say for the Roborock vacuum lineup, which I'm reviewing next. I have 8 robo vacuums, so I want to see which is best and which is worse, so some to see when that comes out. And again, check out the links in the description to support this channel. I appreciate that a lot.